What begins as a regular shopping day turns into a heart-racing nightmare when panic erupts in the mall. Amidst the chaos, a pregnant white woman stumbles, caught in the stampede. As crowds rush past, filming the scene with phones instead of helping, a young black boy does something extraordinary. He steps in, shields her from the crowd, and walks her toward safety. What the cameras capture next, and what her husband does afterward, will make you question everything about courage, compassion, and how we see each other in moments of crisis. Location: Lincoln Mall. Time: 5:12 p.m., Saturday. The day had started off perfectly normal. The corridors of Lincoln Mall echoed with weekend energy. Music floated from the speakers overhead. Shoppers moved from store to store, clutching bags, chatting, and sipping cold drinks. Children giggled as they chased each other near the indoor fountain. The scent of pretzels and teriyaki chicken drifted from the food court, mixing with the sharp chill of mall air conditioning. Everything about the scene felt familiar, safe, ordinary. Then, without warning, a scream sliced through the air like shattered glass. For a split second, the mall fell silent. Heads turned, mouths opened in confusion. And then came the stampede. People ran in every direction. Security guards yelled into radios. Store employees slammed gates shut. Strollers were abandoned. Drinks spilled. The calm dissolved into chaos as the building echoed with thundering footsteps and panicked shouts. No one knew what was happening. Some said it was a shooter. Others mentioned a fight. But the details did not matter. Fear took the lead. The mall, moments ago so full of life, turned into a maze of fleeing bodies. In the swirl of panic, a visibly pregnant woman stumbled near the entrance of a boutique. She tried to steady herself, one hand clutching her belly, the other reaching out. She fell to her knees, gasping. "Help!" she said, but her voice was lost in the chaos. People swerved around her. One man nearly tripped over her but kept running. A teenage girl paused only long enough to raise her phone, recording the scene before disappearing into the crowd. The woman sobbed, trying to pull herself up. Her face was pale with pain. Her hand pressed against her stomach, her other arm waving desperately. No one stopped. Then, out of nowhere, a boy appeared. He was barely 12, short, wiry, wearing sneakers that were slightly too big. His backpack bounced as he sprinted against the current of the crowd. "Hold on, ma'am. I have got you." His voice cut through the noise with clarity. He reached her side, kneeling beside her without hesitation. People yelled at him to move. Someone shouted, "Get out of the way!" But the boy stayed. He wrapped his arms around the woman's shoulders and helped her sit up. "Would you stop to help when everyone else is running?" Leave a comment below. Marcus Green was no stranger to being overlooked. At 11 years old, he had already learned the rhythm of a world that rarely paused for someone like him. He walked home quickly, kept his eyes down, and never spoke unless spoken to. He was a quiet soul, shaped by experience more than words. He lived on the other side of town, where sidewalks were cracked and bus stops were just signs without benches. Raised by his grandmother, Ms. Loretta, in a modest two-bedroom apartment, Marcus had long understood what it meant to make do with little. His mother worked 2 jobs, mornings at the diner, evenings cleaning offices downtown. She left early and came home late. His father had not been around since he was a baby. Ms. Loretta was his anchor. She was the one who packed his lunches, double-checked his homework, and taught him how to stretch a dollar. On Saturdays, Marcus usually stayed close to home. He washed cars in the neighborhood, ran errands for the elderly, and walked Miss Loretta to her weekly doctor visits. He loved reading and spent more time in the library than in front of a screen. Books gave him company when the house was too quiet. He was not the kind of kid who drew attention, but he was the kind of kid everyone respected. The mail carrier always waved. The corner store owner gave him an extra piece of candy. Miss Jenkins from down the hall once said, "That boy's got a good heart." That Saturday had started like most. He ate breakfast with his grandma and checked his list of chores. Then he grabbed the $8 he had earned washing 3 neighbors' cars that week and decided to take the bus to Lincoln Mall. His phone charger had stopped working, and he had seen a used electronics booth near the food court where chargers sold cheap. He did not ask anyone for a ride. He never did. He put on clean jeans, tied his laces, and slipped his bus pass into his pocket. At the mall, Marcus walked with quiet focus. He was not there to browse. He was on a mission. The hallway buzzed with noise, laughter, and the sound of footsteps on polished tiles. He moved with ease, unnoticed by most, until that moment. He heard it before he saw it, the scream that fractured everything. People ran. Panic pulsed through the space like electricity. Shouts replaced laughter. Chairs toppled. Bags were dropped. Marcus ducked into a corner, then peeked out. That was when he saw her. That choice, made in the middle of fear, changed everything. Do you know a kid like Marcus? Tell us their story. The quiet ones often carry the strongest hearts. What began as a celebration quickly spiraled into chaos. It was meant to be a surprise, an organized dance mob near the central fountain of Lincoln Mall. Music played from speakers as performers began moving in sync, drawing a crowd of curious onlookers. Children clapped. Parents pulled out phones to record. Laughter floated in the air. Then came the sound. A loud crash echoed through the space. A tray from the upper food court railing slipped from someone's hand and landed with a bang near the ground floor fountain. The sharp noise, amplified by the mall's acoustics, pierced the air. Someone screamed, "Gun!" Panic bloomed instantly. There was no gun, no shooter, just a loud noise and the human instinct to flee. But by the time anyone could explain, it was too late. People screamed. Others scattered in all directions. A wave of bodies surged toward the exits. Parents grabbed children. Friends lost each other in the rush. Shoppers dove behind benches and displays. Someone knocked over a kiosk, sending merchandise flying. A woman screamed as a glass panel shattered. Another man fell trying to vault a planter and got trampled by the crowd behind him. A shoe flew into the fountain. Shopping bags were abandoned. At the edge of the fountain, Rachel Wallace, 8 months pregnant, lost her balance in the chaos. She had been walking slowly toward the escalator when the surge began. Someone brushed past her roughly. She stumbled, arms flailing. She fell hard onto the floor. A man trying to jump the barrier nearly kicked her. He looked down for only a second before disappearing into the stampede. Her hands trembled as she tried to push herself upright. She winced and held her belly, her eyes wide with fear. Phones appeared all around her. A teenager held one high and live-streamed while running. The screen bobbed as he shouted, "It's crazy out here." Another person ran past, recording the scene in slow motion. A woman nearby laughed nervously, shaking her head. What is happening? This is insane. Rachel was still on the ground, still calling out. A fountain jet burst beside her. Water splashed across the tiles. No one looked back. Children cried. Alarmed security guards shouted for people to stay calm, but their voices were lost in the roar of panic. The mall, once filled with music and food court chatter, now echoed with fear. And still, no one stopped for the woman who lay crying at the fountain's edge. She curled to her side, struggling to protect her unborn child. Her purse had spilled open. Keys, a half-eaten granola bar, and a folded shopping list scattered beside her. The footage of that moment would later be played on every news station, dozens of people running by, not one slowing down. Rachel's voice trembled. "Please, somebody." The crowd kept moving. Have we lost our instinct to help? Drop your thoughts. What does it take to stop for someone in need? From the opposite end of the food court, Marcus stood frozen for a heartbeat. He saw the panic. He saw the crowds pushing toward the exits, but above all, he saw her. A woman on the ground, clutching her stomach, crying out. Something gripped his chest. Without thinking, he dropped his plastic bag with the used phone charger he had just bought. It clattered to the floor as he took off running. He pushed through the wave of people rushing in the opposite direction. He weaved between panicked shoppers, ducked under a flailing arm, and sidestepped a fallen sign. A shopping cart crashed beside him. He kept going. "Hold still! I got you!" he yelled, his voice cracking with urgency. The woman lay curled near the fountain. Her face was pale. Her body trembled. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Ma'am, you're okay," he said, trying to sound calm. "I'm right here. Just breathe." Rachel Wallace looked up at him through tears. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because you need help," he said. "That's enough." He gently helped her sit up, one hand on her back, the other guiding her trembling fingers over her belly. "Breathe in and out. Like that. You're doing great." The chaos around them continued. Screams echoed from the second level. People streamed down the escalators. But in that small space near the fountain, Marcus focused on one thing: keeping her safe. He looked around quickly. No security in sight yet. He spotted a bench nearby, out of the direct flow of people. "Okay," he said softly. "We're going to move. I've got you." He shifted beside her, wrapping her arm around his small shoulder. It took effort. She was heavy with pregnancy, weak with fear, and unable to stand on her own. "I'm right here," he said again. "We'll go slow." Step by step they moved across the floor. A few people still ran past them, but some slowed, watching. One woman lowered her phone, her eyes wide. A man turned back briefly, then followed Marcus with his eyes. Rachel winced with each step. Marcus tightened his grip and kept walking. They reached the bench. He helped her lower onto it gently. She leaned back, gasping. "You did it," he told her. "You're safe now. Just keep breathing. Help's coming." Rachel looked at him again. "You're just a kid." He gave her a quick nod. "Yeah, but I'm here." She squeezed his hand. "What would you do, film or act? Comment below. Sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest courage." Just steps from the safe side of the mall, Rachel stumbled again. Her knees buckled. Her strength gave out all at once. Marcus saw it coming. He reached for her, but her weight was already falling. Without hesitation, he dove beneath her, sliding his small frame to catch her before she hit the floor. His arms strained. His back hit the tile hard. Rachel landed partly on him, knocking the breath from his lungs. A sharp sting flared in his arm where it scraped across the polished floor. Blood soaked through his sleeve. He gasped, teeth clenched. "Ow," he muttered. "But you are okay. You are gonna be okay." Rachel lay on her side, panting. Her eyes fluttered. Her fingers clutched the fabric of his shirt. "You caught me," she whispered. "Of course," he said. "I told you. I got you." The mall around them still buzzed with aftershock. Most of the crowd had fled, but noise echoed from deeper inside. A security alarm pulsed from overhead. Lights flickered. Finally, 2 security guards rounded the corner. Their radios crackled. One pointed and shouted, "Step back! Move away from her." Marcus blinked, confused. He stayed where he was, one arm supporting Rachel. The second guard rushed closer. "I said step back! What are you doing?" Rachel lifted her head. Her voice was weak but fierce. "Do not yell at him. He saved me. He caught me when I fell. He is the only one who helped." The guards hesitated. One looked at Marcus again, finally seeing the blood, the torn sleeve, the scraped elbow. "He's just a kid," one muttered. Rachel nodded. A kid who did more than 100 adults. Marcus slowly helped Rachel sit upright again. Her face still showed pain, but her breathing had calmed. He looked up at the guards. "We just need a medic," he said simply. The guards exchanged a glance, then radioed for help. One stepped away to wave over paramedics who had arrived at the opposite end of the corridor. A crowd had begun to reform in the distance. Phones appeared again. People whispered. But now they were watching something different. Not panic, not chaos, but a boy on the ground, injured and calm, holding the hand of someone he refused to leave. Ever been blamed for doing the right thing? Share your experience. Sometimes courage is quiet until someone tries to silence it. Paramedics swarmed the scene as soon as they were cleared in. One knelt beside Marcus, checking the bloodied sleeve. Another focused on Rachel, gently guiding her onto a stretcher. But she would not let go of Marcus's hand. "He stays with me," she said, her voice firm despite the pain. They nodded. One medic helped Marcus to his feet and walked him beside the stretcher. His legs wobbled beneath him, and his free hand trembled, but he did not let go either. Rachel's breathing was labored, but her eyes stayed locked on his. As they moved toward the ambulance entrance, a black SUV screeched to a stop outside. A man in a crisp navy suit burst out, eyes wild, face flushed with panic. He ran past the cordon of onlookers and ducked under the tape. "Rachel, baby, are you okay?" He reached her side just as the stretcher slowed. Rachel looked up, her face pale but determined. "I'm okay," she said softly, "thanks to him." Her husband's eyes swept across the stretcher. Then he saw Marcus. The boy stood beside her, still gripping her hand. His shirt was torn, his arm wrapped in gauze, his face streaked with sweat and grit. "Who is this kid?" Rachel reached for her husband's hand with her free one and pulled him closer. "He is the reason I am still alive." There was a long pause. Her husband blinked, taking in the full scene. The medics, the crowd, the camera phones, the stunned expressions. "You?" he asked, turning to Marcus. Marcus nodded once, not knowing what to say. "What happened?" the man asked, still trying to process it. Rachel tightened her grip. "He ran through a crowd to help me. He caught me when I fell. He stayed even when security yelled at him. He did not think twice." The man's voice softened. "Thank you. Thank you for helping my wife." Marcus gave a small shrug. She needed help. That is all. Paramedics started moving again. Rachel's husband walked beside the stretcher. He looked down at Marcus. "What is your name, son?" "Marcus. Marcus Green." "Well, Marcus," he said, his voice steadier now, "I will never forget you." Marcus looked away, unsure how to respond. He felt the heat of eyes on him. Phones raised again, the world watching. But in that moment, all that mattered was that Rachel was safe. And she still held his hand. What would you think if a stranger saved your family? React below. Sometimes heroes do not wear uniforms. They just show up when it counts. That night, footage from the mall spread across the internet with lightning speed. Clips showed Marcus weaving through panicked crowds, reaching Rachel as she lay near the fountain, and leading her slowly toward safety. People watched in disbelief as others ran past her without stopping, eyes fixed on the exits. The clearest video came from a second-floor camera. It captured the moment Marcus dropped his bag and sprinted toward her. It showed the fall, the struggle, and the moment he shielded her with his own body. There were no cuts, no commentary, just the raw truth of a boy doing what others had not. The internet responded quickly. Within hours, hashtags began to trend. #Marcus the Brave and #Mall Hero. On TikTok, users created edits with music and slow motion. On Twitter, users praised his courage. "This boy is everything right with the world," one post read. "He showed us what real bravery looks like," wrote another. But not everyone reacted with grace. Some users questioned the footage, calling it staged. Others dismissed it entirely. A few tried to politicize it, twisting the story to fit a wider narrative. Still, the voices of doubt were drowned beneath waves of support. Rachel had stayed silent most of the day, but by nightfall, she opened Instagram Live. Her face was pale, her hospital gown visible under a soft blanket, but her voice was steady. "He did not stop to judge me. He did not film me. He did not look around to see who was watching. He helped. That boy deserves everything." Tears filled her eyes. "Marcus Green is the reason my child is still alive. He is the reason I am still here." The live stream drew hundreds of thousands of views in minutes. People flooded the comments with messages of thanks and admiration. One wrote, "Your words made me cry. That kid deserves the world." Later that evening, Rachel's husband posted a message on his verified social media account. It was simple, just one sentence. "He saved my wife and unborn child. Thank you, Marcus." That message was shared over 2 million times. News outlets followed quickly. Morning shows replayed the video on loop. Cable news aired slowed-down segments, zooming in on Marcus's face, on the scraped arm, on the hand he refused to let go of. A major network featured an exclusive interview with Marcus's grandmother, Ms. Loretta. She sat on their worn living room couch, proud but composed. "I always told him, if you can help somebody, do it. You never know when it matters most." The host nodded, visibly moved. Ms. Loretta smiled softly. "He is just being himself." At school the next day, students wore shirts with Marcus's name printed in bold. Teachers stopped him in the hallway. Strangers dropped off cards. A local bakery sent cupcakes to his class. The mayor called personally. For Marcus, the attention felt overwhelming. He had not done it for any of this. When someone asked if he wanted to be famous, he shook his head. "No," he said, "I just wanted her to be okay." Can social media be a force for truth, or just noise? Discuss. When does a screen help us see clearer? In the days that followed, the story of Marcus Green continued to ripple across the city. His name appeared on news broadcasts, in newspaper columns, and across countless social media pages. But the biggest moment came at a press conference held outside City Hall. Rachel and her husband stood side by side before a crowd of reporters. Cameras flashed as Rachel, now resting comfortably and showing signs of recovery, stepped forward to the microphone. "We are here today because someone refused to walk away. Because a boy many of us might have walked past without a second thought did something most adults would not." Her husband took her hand and added, "We are starting a college fund in Marcus Green's name. It will be open to him and eventually to others like him who step up when it matters most. Marcus stood off to the side in a crisp shirt and slacks, his hands folded nervously. When asked if he wanted to speak, he stepped up slowly. "Can we include my grandma?" he asked into the mic. "She raised me. Everything I did, she taught me." The crowd grew silent, then broke into applause. Rachel nodded with tears in her eyes. "Yes, Marcus, of course we can." The next day, the mayor held a city ceremony. Marcus was awarded a Medal of Civic Bravery. The mayor called him a reminder that courage does not wait for permission. A crowd filled the plaza. Students from Marcus's school attended with signs that read, "Our hero lives here." Meanwhile, Lincoln Mall issued a public statement and apology. Their security team had reviewed the footage and admitted they failed to recognize the situation fully. "We regret how Marcus was initially treated and are committed to better training for emergency response." Several local businesses stepped forward with offers. A tutoring center granted Marcus unlimited sessions through high school. A mentorship nonprofit paired him with college students for guidance. A bookstore delivered boxes of novels to his home with a note that read, "For the kid who chose action over applause." A shoe store replaced the worn sneakers he had run through the mall in. A local restaurant invited him and his grandmother to a dinner in their honor. Despite the gifts and the attention, Marcus remained grounded. Reporters tried to get sound bites. One asked what he would do with all the recognition. Marcus shrugged. "I didn't do it for fame. She needed help. That was all." He spent that evening doing what he always did, reading next to Ms. Loretta while she listened to the news. The phone rang with more interview requests, but Marcus let it go to voicemail. At school, things had changed. Students gave him high fives. Teachers smiled more when they saw him. Still, Marcus walked the halls like always. He sat at his usual seat in the back of the library and returned books on time. He had not expected the world to see what he did. But now that they had, he only hoped it would help others look differently at the quiet ones, the overlooked, the kids who just try to do the right thing without being asked. A reporter once asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. Marcus replied, "Someone who helps. What kind of legacy would you leave behind in a crisis?" Courage is not loud, it just shows up. A week after the chaos, Lincoln Mall began to look like itself again. The broken signs were repaired. The floors shined once more. Music returned to the overhead speakers, and the familiar smell of popcorn floated from the movie theater. But something had changed. Near the central fountain, where fear had once overtaken everything, a small bench now stood. Two people sat on it quietly, Rachel Wallace and Marcus Green. Rachel's hospital bracelet still clung loosely to her wrist. A thin monitor wire ran from a small device to her rounded belly. It blinked gently, confirming the heartbeat of the life inside her. Her face looked brighter, more rested. She held a cup of juice in one hand, the other resting lightly on her stomach. Marcus sat beside her, legs swinging slightly over the tile. He wore a clean hoodie and fresh sneakers. The city medal still hung around his neck, though he had tried to tuck it beneath his collar. They did not say much at first. They just watched the fountain dance. Finally, Rachel turned toward him. "You didn't just save me," she whispered. "You saved both of us." Marcus looked at her belly, then back at her eyes. He nodded quietly. "I'm glad you're okay." A small crowd began to gather a few steps away. Mall staff had arranged something. People whispered as a black cloth was pulled from the marble base of a new plaque beside the fountain. The inscription read, "In honor of Marcus Green, who acted when no one else did. Rachel placed a hand over her heart. Marcus read the words and then looked away, unsure what to feel. A few people clapped. A nearby family took a photo. More than anything, it was quiet, respectful, real. Shoppers passed by slowly, taking a moment to glance at the plaque. One mother leaned down and whispered the words to her daughter. A mall employee snapped a picture and added it to the mall's website. A teenager took a selfie in front of it and posted, "Some people talk, some people act." The plaque became a stopping point, not just for photos, but for reflection. Teachers brought the students on field trips to see it. Local journalists followed up with weekly pieces on ordinary kids doing extraordinary things. But Marcus never bragged. He returned to school. He returned to chores. He returned to evenings beside Ms. Loretta, who kept clipping articles about him and storing them in a worn blue binder. Rachel visited the bench every Sunday. Sometimes she sat alone, sometimes with her husband, and sometimes Marcus came too. They shared updates. She let him listen to the baby's heartbeat. He gave her book recommendations. One afternoon she said, "I want to name him after you. If it's a boy," Marcus blinked. "You don't have to." She smiled. "I want to." Outside the mall, the world moved on. New headlines came, new stories dominated screens. But inside those walls, something had stayed. A memory of a moment when one child stepped forward, when fear ruled the crowd, but courage stood still. And because of that, lives were changed. Do you believe real change begins with small courage? Share this story. Say his name, Marcus Green.